SCP-049, the St. Luther's Incident, O5 Council Debrief Transcript Recording, Type Audio Log. Speaker, Site-19 Director, date May 25th. Before going into the incident, here's an overview of SCP-049. Overview for Council reference, Object Class, Euclid. SCP-049 is a humanoid entity measuring approximately 1.9 meters in height, wearing the garb of a medieval European plague doctor. The robes, gloves, and mask appear to be part of its physical form. They are not removable by any known means. The entity speaks fluent English, as well as several historical languages, including medieval French and Latin. Its voice is calm, articulate, and clinical in tone. SCP-049 identifies itself as a physician devoted to the study and eradication of what it calls the pestilence. When questioned, it describes this condition in abstract and inconsistent terms, referring alternately to disease, moral corruption, or spiritual decay. No biological agent corresponding to this pestilence has ever been verified. Primary anomalous properties. SCP-049 demonstrates a form of instantaneous biological nullification through direct physical contact. When it touches a living human being, normal biological functions cease immediately. The subject dies without signs of struggle or distress. Following termination, SCP-049 performs what it refers to as surgery. It carries a small leather medical satchel containing instruments of its own manufacture: scalpels, forceps, bone saws, and sutures. These tools often materialize or vanish when not under direct observation. After several hours of operation, the entity will produce a reanimated corpse, designated SCP-0491. These instances exhibit only basic motor activity and limited reflexive response. They show no higher cognitive function or awareness, instead moving erratically until they collapse or are neutralized. When questioned about these outcomes, SCP-049 expresses disappointment, stating that the result is less than ideal, but a necessary step toward a greater cure. Behavioral profile. In containment, SCP-049 is typically docile and cooperative. It spends long periods in silence or writing with improvised materials on the walls of its chamber. However, it becomes highly agitated when it believes the pestilence is present. In such cases, it will attempt to treat nearby individuals, regardless of permission or safety protocol. SCP-049 appears genuinely convinced of its medical mission. It regards Foundation personnel as colleagues and often attempts to instruct them on proper treatment. Interviews show a consistent theme. SCP-049 does not perceive its actions as violence. It sees them as mercy. Containment Summary. SCP-049 is housed in a standard humanoid containment cell at Site-19 or Site-66, depending on research phase. Physical contact is strictly prohibited without Level 3 authorization. Interaction is limited to remote audio communication. Following each recorded termination event, SCP-049 enters a period of compliance lasting several days. This recording is for the O5 Council, compiled following the events collectively designated the St. Luther's Incident. The incident occurred between January 31st and February 28th, year redacted, resulting in an estimated 47 civilian fatalities and the temporary loss of SCP-049 from containment. I will now provide a verified sequence of events, compiled from internal logs, on-site observation, and tactical bodycam telemetry. My objective is clarity. Conclusions are left to the Council. At approximately 0430 hours, SCP-049 was in transit under controlled sedation. Transfer route: Site-19's Euclid Containment Wing to Site-66 for long-term study. Procedure was routine. All containment protocols were followed without deviation. The subject's behavioral baseline had remained stable for 112 consecutive days. Research Division classified its disposition as docile inquiry phase. Minimal speech, compliant posture, and no unsolicited movement. When questioned about its silence 2 weeks prior, SCP-049 stated, quote, "The pestilence sleeps, for now." It gave no elaboration. Containment transport consisted of an armored, negative-pressure convoy in dual escort formation. Departure logged at 0417 hours from Site 19's lower bay. All systems nominal. Sedation feed stable. The first irregularity occurred at 0734 hours. A sudden bioelectric surge was recorded from the subject's restraint module, consistent with cardiac arrhythmia. Within 27 seconds, sedation levels flatlined. At 0736, the rear escort reported auditory disturbance, rhythmic knocking, followed by low humming, described as a man humming beneath his breath. Cameras showed SCP-049 upright, eyes open, restraints intact. It then spoke clearly without prompting. The body must rest, but the cure does not. Escort Command initiated emergency route deviation toward Harker Logistics, a secure refueling front. At 0742, all restraint points failed simultaneously. Fail-safe neuromuscular inhibitors did not engage. Vehicle telemetry shows one escort attempting manual override before the feed cuts. Recovery teams later found the transport sealed from the inside. All 3 Foundation personnel were deceased. Cause of death, massive cranial trauma, consistent with deliberate post-mortem surgical incision. SCP-049 was not present. Satellite thermal imaging identified a single humanoid heat signature moving toward St. Luther's Township. Weather conditions: overcast, light snow. Drone tracking compromised by interference. First civilian contact occurred at the St. Luther's General Hospital ambulance bay. Local dispatch received multiple calls referencing a man in plague doctor robes. 2 responding officers arrived on scene shortly after. Dashcam footage shows SCP-049 standing motionless outside the entrance. When addressed, it raised one gloved hand and spoke. Audio indistinct. Both officers collapsed within seconds. No visible contact recorded. Mobile Task Force Epsilon 9, designation Fire Eaters, was deployed under the cover of a chemical spill response. Perimeter established. Civilian evacuation incomplete. First responders entering the emergency lobby reported a pervasive odor, ethylene and chloroform residue. Lighting operational. Patient rooms empty. The intercom system cycled a single phrase repeatedly. Dr. Hargreaves, please report to pathology. No such staff member existed. MTF Bravo 2 entered the pathology wing. 14 bodies were found, each bearing thoracic incisions consistent with surgical exploration. All exhibited early rigor mortis, yet maintained elevated core temperature, approximately 37 degrees Celsius. Audio from Helmet Cam Bravo 204 recorded the following. Central, we have multiple cadavers, eyes open, no visible decay. Confirm no movement? Negative. Wait, one of them just blinked. Contact was lost within 60 seconds. At 0912 hours, full lockdown of St. Luther's General was authorized. Remaining civilians presumed casualties. SCP-049 was visually confirmed on Sublevel 1, standing beside a gurney. It appeared to be writing on the wall using IV fluid. Message reads, "The cure must be shared." Following the confirmed breach and civilian contact, the Foundation initiated Protocol Veneris. All communications, digital and analog, were terminated. Public cover story: toxic gas leak. Epsilon 9 maintained perimeter control while ETA 10, See No Evil, deployed for interior reconnaissance. Objective: re-establish visual on SCP-049 and assess contamination extent. ETA 10 entered at 0948. Interior temperature: 12 degrees Celsius. Lighting unstable. PA system emitted a steady rhythmic tone resembling a human heartbeat. No electrical source identified. At 0952, thermal imaging captured humanoid movement between rooms. SCP-049 did not react until the team approached the intensive care unit. It then spoke. You came to watch the cure unfold. You will understand, in time. The entity gestured towards several occupied beds, former staff members. Each was alive, but without measurable neural activity. SCP-049 stated, they were lost, riddled with the pestilence. I have given them rest and purpose. They are clean. At 0958, one reanimated subject began to convulse. Chest cavity ruptured. No foreign organism emerged. Tissue reconstituted, self-healing. Then vocalization. Operators described the sound as a mimicry of laughter. All 4 reanimated subjects began speaking simultaneously, repeating fragments of SCP-049's dialogue. ETA 10 was ordered to withdraw. 2 operatives failed recall. Recovered later. Upright and surgical restraints. Facial tissue desiccated. Time differential unexplainable. By 10:15 hours, biohazard readings confirmed an airborne agent localized to the hospital's HVAC system. Containment measures deployed. The agent degraded rapidly once removed from the environment. However, secondary contamination manifested as imitation. Civilians nearby began mimicking SCP-049's behavior: archaic speech, requests for surgical tools, attempts to enter the hospital. No exposure vector identified. At 10:43, SCP-049 exited through the ambulance bay. Its movement was calm. Personnel reported a scent of antiseptic and decay. The entity stopped briefly at the cordon and said, "Do not mourn them. The plague takes what it must." Then continued into the town center. Epsilon 9 initiated pursuit but disengaged due to rising civilian interference. SCP-049 entered a municipal building. Shortly after, dense fog began to emanate from within. Thermal scans indicated a rising count of heat signatures, one becoming 17. At 11:30 hours, St. Luther's Township was declared a Level 4 quarantine zone. All routes sealed. Fog persisted. Across all monitoring channels, rhythmic knocking was heard, repeating every 6 seconds, even after all movement ceased. At 14:40 hours, SCP-049 exited the fog perimeter. All heat signatures within the zone vanished simultaneously. When the fog cleared, only surgical instruments remained, arranged neatly in a semicircle, as if awaiting further use. The entity was recontained at 15:22 hours. No resistance offered. Its only statement: the work continues elsewhere. 47 confirmed fatalities, 32 disappearances presumed anomalous. The hospital has been razed. St. Luther's Township remains under permanent exclusion. That concludes the verified operational chronology. The following section will address post-containment analysis and behavioral deviations observed in SCP-049 following the St. Luther's event. Part 2, SCP-049, the St. Luther's Incident. O5 Council Debrief, Transcript Document 05-UD049 STL02, Recording Type Audio Log Continuation. Speaker Site Director, Site 19 Classification, Level 5. Following recontainment, SCP-049 was returned to Site 19 under high-risk quarantine conditions. Containment Team Alpha 3 reported 0 casualties during extraction, though 2 members required psychological evaluation for disassociation and recurring auditory hallucinations. Both claimed to hear knocking sounds for several hours after leaving the perimeter. The entity was silent throughout transport. Upon arrival, it requested permission to prepare a report. Request denied. Standard reintroduction to containment protocol initiated. All materials sterilized. Environmental air fully replaced. Initial behavioral assessment conducted 48 hours later. Subject exhibited no signs of agitation or resistance. However, notable deviation from baseline speech patterns was recorded. Lexical analysis revealed decreased use of plague-related terminology, replaced by formalized medical phrasing consistent with early 20th century pathology. Example excerpt from session log. The pathogen is not of the flesh, Director. It lingers in the air between minds, a contagion of thought. You called it hysteria. I call it progress. The term contagion of thought appears repeatedly throughout interviews. Cross-analysis with memetic and cognitohazard documentation ongoing. No known link yet established. 3 days post-recontainment, SCP-049 requested a subject for final verification of cure integrity. Denied. It then remained seated for 12 hours without movement. Heartbeat elevated. Body temperature fluctuated between 20 and 41 degrees Celsius in regular cycles. When questioned, it responded only with, "Something still breathes in St. Luther's." Surveillance from that period registered intermittent interference. Short bursts of static coincided precisely with the phrase's repetition. Audio engineers later confirmed subharmonic frequencies embedded within SCP-049's voice, identical to the interference pattern present during the hospital operation. Correlation noted. At approximately 2100 hours, a localized blackout affected the Euclid wing. Duration, 23 seconds. Upon power restoration, SCP-049's cell was intact. However, on the observation glass, a message had appeared in condensation. The cure adapts. Thermal residue confirmed. No entry breach detected. Post-incident analysis indicates the phrase appeared simultaneously across 6 separate observation points, each monitoring SCP-049's audio feed. Cross-timecode synchronization exact to the millisecond. All writing vanished within minutes. Personnel reported a sudden chill, followed by the scent of antiseptic. Medical screenings performed on all containment staff exposed during transport and reintroduction. 3 exhibited mild neurological anomalies: transient aphasia, momentary confusion, and compulsive note-taking behaviors. Cognitive patterns normalized after 72 hours. No biological agent detected. The following morning, SCP-049 voluntarily initiated communication. Transcript excerpt follows. I did not wish for suffering, Director. The pestilence took form when I sought to end it. It used my hands, it wore my shape. You will find it again among your own. When asked to clarify, SCP-049 described a copy without intent. Entity declined further questioning, turning its head away and repeating, "The cure will walk." For 48 hours thereafter, SCP-049 entered a motionless state resembling hibernation. Metabolic readings dropped to near zero. During this interval, Site-19 systems detected faint electromagnetic emissions from within the containment chamber, fluctuating in rhythm with a human heartbeat. No external equipment present. At exactly 0600 hours, the emissions ceased. SCP-049 reanimated, looked directly at the observation camera, and spoke. Another physician has taken up my work. Subsequent Foundation monitoring across North America revealed multiple civilian reports referencing plague doctors appearing in hospital settings. All cases traced to digital fabrications or performance art. One instance, however, remains unresolved. A security recording from Memorial Hospital shows an individual matching SCP-049's proportions entering a restricted wing at 0314 hours. Footage cuts. When recovered, the wing was empty, but surgical tables were arranged identically to those found in St. Luther's General. Recovered inscription on the wall, second study commenced. Blood analysis inconclusive. Current classification remains Euclid with conditional escalation to Keter pending review. Containment procedures updated to include continuous remote observation with automated interference dampeners. Personnel rotation reduced to 12-hour shifts. No physical interaction authorized without O5 approval. A proposal has been submitted to reclassify SCP-049's actions at St. Luther's as a cognitohazardous outbreak rather than a biological one. Internal debate continues. Division of Memetics has requested direct access to the subject for structured testing. Request denied until further notice. The entity remains calm. Occasionally writes on its containment wall using its finger, tracing the shape of a caduceus. Infrared reveals heat differentials forming the same symbol on the floor overnight. Each time, the symbol fades by dawn. During its last recorded communication, SCP-049 addressed no one directly. Audio captured faintly. When the final bell tolls, they will come to me, bleeding knowledge. The pestilence is thought. The cure, understanding. That concludes current findings related to post-containment behavior. An O5-level inquiry has been scheduled to determine whether the St. Luther's event represents an evolution of SCP-049's anomaly or the emergence of a secondary vector under its influence. Part 3. SCP-049. The St. Luther's Incident O5 Council Debrief Transcript. Document Code HOD O5-VAV-AUD049STL03. Recording Type Audio Log. Council Hearing Extract. O5-7 Site Director. Classification Level 5 Eyes Only. O5-2. This hearing is convened to review the containment breach of SCP-049 and the subsequent contamination event designated St. Luther's Incident. All statements are to be factual. No speculation beyond confirmed observation. Understood. O5-7. Director, summarize the sequence of compromise in one sentence. Containment integrity failed due to an unregistered frequency overlap between environmental telemetry and SCP-049's vocal resonance. O5-7. Explain how a voice caused a containment collapse. Site Director, the entity's speech emitted subharmonic patterns that mimicked command signals in our sensor network. The system interpreted these as valid administrative overrides. Doors disengaged automatically. The breach was not mechanical, it was informational. 05-2. Then we are to assume SCP-049 intentionally engineered this pattern. Site Director, we cannot confirm intent, but the synchronization was exact. Once free, the entity bypassed multiple checkpoints without resistance. 057, and proceeded directly to a hospital. Yes, St. Luther's General, 20 kilometers north. It entered through an emergency wing. Surveillance shows orderlies allowing passage, though none later recall seeing the figure. 052. How long until the Foundation was aware of exposure? Site Director, 4 hours. A field team intercepted civilian dispatch chatter describing a doctor in black treating the dying. By then, the operating theater was sealed from inside. 057. Casualties. Site Director, 32. All medical staff present in the West Wing. Most exhibited post-mortem thoracic incisions. The bodies displayed cellular anomalies. Uniform sterilization of tissue, no sign of decomposition. 052. Any speech from the entity during containment efforts? Site Director, yes. One phrase recorded by thermal mic through reinforced glass. You sought to contain a physician. You built a ward instead. 057. Director, do you believe SCP-049 has achieved replication? Unknown. However, in the aftermath, one of our containment engineers, Technician Vale, began writing formulae identical to SCP-049's notes from 178. He had no access to those archives. 052. How long after exposure? Site Director, 6 hours. He claimed to hear instructions whispered from the intercom, though the line was dead. 057. Containment? Terminated under Protocol Theta Black. 052. You've reviewed the post-breach analysis, electromagnetic anomalies, synchronized inscriptions, behavioral drift. Do you believe SCP-049's anomaly remains biological? No. The evidence supports a mimetic component, transmission through conceptual contact rather than pathogen. 057. Then the plague has evolved. Director, your assessment of risk? Escalating. If St. Luther's represented an experimental iteration, we must assume further vectors may already exist. 052. Containment recommendation? Site Director, permanent isolation. No human interaction. AI-assisted interviews only. Termination authorization remains under 05 discretion. 057. Understood. But if replication has occurred, destruction of the original may not matter. Correct. The vector may persist through observation itself. 057. The last communication from SCP-049 mentions another physician. Have we verified this? Site Directive. The phrase may indicate a secondary anomaly or simply metaphorical speech. However, patterns in global data streams show an increase in medical imagery featuring plague iconography within 24 hours of the incident's broadcast suppression. 052. So it spreads conceptually through imitation. Possibly. We are monitoring linguistic frequency across digital channels. The term "the cure walks" appears in 17 new message boards. 057. Classified containment leak? Site Director, no. Probability of natural coincidence is below 1%. 052. Then it's decided. The Foundation will reclassify SCP-049 as Keter pending review. A full media sterilization campaign will follow. 057. And the civilians exposed at St. Luther's. Site all quarantined under pretense of biohazard exposure. 2 remain in Foundation custody. Both display abnormal neural coherence on EEG. During sedation, they whisper identical sequences of numbers. What numbers? Coordinates. When plotted, they align with our containment site. 052. That will be sufficient for today. The Council will reconvene at 0300 to determine whether this vector constitutes a new SCP designation. All data concerning the St. Luther's incident is to remain sealed under Protocol 05 Black. 057. And SCP-049? Keep it under observation. No dialogue, no proximity, no mirrors, glass, or reflective surfaces. The less it sees of itself, the better. 052. End recording. Part 4 SCP-049, The St. Luther's Incident. 05 Council Debrief Transcript. Part 4. Document 05049 STL4. Recording type audio log. Final session excerpt. Speakers 05 Chair 057. Classification Level 5 Eyes Only. Director For the record, summarize SCP-049's current containment state. Contained at Site-66 in Medical Isolation Cell T4. Subject is sedated, resting in seated position. No movement since Day 6 post-incident. Environmental controls remain sterile. Audio feeds record intermittent low-band frequencies consistent with speech patterns, though no words are formed. 057, does it still speak to the coroner? No visible activity in that sector, but thermal traces persist. A 6-degree temperature rise every 60 seconds in time with the recorded knocking pattern. 052, we've heard that pattern in your previous brief. 6 seconds between taps. Still consistent? Yes, always 6. Every cycle. Our sensors reset hourly to confirm it isn't equipment noise. The sound is generated within the chamber itself. Sometimes it answers our voice commands before we transmit them. 057, explain that statement. During one routine test, before the researcher spoke the question, SCP-049 replied audibly with the correct response. 2.7 seconds early, it completed sentences that had not yet been uttered. We have since disconnected all bidirectional feeds. Understood. Continue. Analysis teams believe we are witnessing an information feedback event, a concept attempting to observe itself. Since containment reestablishment, every monitor within 20 meters of its cell shows a slight image burn-in, a silhouette of a plague mask, even when powered off. 057, is that physical or memetic residue? Site direct indeterminate. We've quarantined the hardware. 052, proceed to your recommendations. 3 primary directives. First, permanent containment under non-visual conditions. All personnel are to operate through automated relay systems only. Any direct human observation requires cognitohazard clearance and memetic scrambling. Second, all research on SCP-049's continuation phenomenon is suspended indefinitely. Linguistic contact with the St. Luther's dataset is strictly forbidden. Digital AI models are to be air-gapped. Third, St. Luther's Township remains a Class E exclusion zone. Foundation surveillance continues to record sporadic infrared signatures, 1 to 2 seconds in duration, resembling standing humanoid forms. No movement. Each time, the heat signature dissipates in exact synchrony with the 6-second pulse. 057. Could these be echoes of the reanimated instances? Site director, possibly. But thermal mapping shows one signature in particular that moves independently. It appears to follow the old main road heading east, towards Site-66. 052 distance, 34 kilometers and closing. At its current rate of manifestation, it will arrive at our outer perimeter in 2 weeks. 052, is there a possibility this is SCP-049 itself? Negative. 049 remains in isolation under constant visual confirmation. Whatever is approaching has the same thermal profile but inverted, cold where it should be warm. Then we have 2 of them, or 1 reflection. 052, Director, final statement for the record. SCP-049 believes its cure has taken root. I no longer believe that is metaphor. The entity is no longer isolated to flesh or memory. It has entered the pattern of observation itself. Every recorded instance of its voice contains the same hidden waveform, a replica of our own speech protocol. In effect, it is learning to speak as us. That will be noted. 057. What of the secondary vocalization you reported? The echo offset by half a second. It still persists. Last night, the offset shortened to 0.4 of a second. By mathematical progression, the voices will synchronize completely within 7 days. 052. Understood. If synchronization occurs, terminate all monitoring equipment immediately. 052. Final Council Directive. SCP-049 remains classified Keter. All data related to the St. Luther's incident is sealed under Protocol 05 Black. There will be no further testing, no interviews, no conversation. Containment means silence. One more thing. If the approaching signature crosses the perimeter, yes. Do not attempt recontainment. Simply record what it says. If you like this video and want more SCP thriller content, please like and subscribe. Attribution. This work is based on SCP-049, The Plague Doctor, SCP-049 by Gabriel Jade, rewritten by djkaktus and Gabriel Jade from the SCP Wiki.